Call the meeting to order. Roll call attendance, please.
Clark
Jack
Brewer
Creighton.
here.
Jack Creighton here.
Alphabetical in this organization, Mr. Creighton. Tom Callahan is here.
Oh, so A is before R.
Yeah,
Boy, that's rankism, I guess.
you're messing up my system. So, all right, Cassie, are you here? You're here.
Yep, Cassie Malatesta here.
Thank you. And we have with us Cassandra Thayer and Judge Cutler is with us. Thank you all for being here. So we'll jump right into it. We have a number of votes and discussions to take. Just for an update, I guess what is it that we have to do with the warrant? We have a notice of intent for the warrant. It has to be done soon. So, we're finalizing it. I haven't counted, but I'm guessing we're at somewhere around 10 articles. And I am going to intend, Jack, I'm going to ask the select board and town manager and the moderator to do a separate night for this. I don't think it will be possible to do 10 articles with the business of annual town meeting. All in one day. But we'll cover that in the future. We'll go over that in the future.
I'll work on that.
Yeah, I just think it's going to make sense. All right, so we're going to start with Article 12. We discussed that number in detail last time. There were just some edits and tweaks, which Judge Cutler has done, and it's been circulated. Does anybody have any further comment about changes to Article 12?
By the way, and variances should be number 6, not 5. That was a duplicate number. And so that means site plan is 7.
Everybody here is allowed a mulligan on minor mistakes.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Where under 12.2, the zoning board of appeals is defined, albeit briefly. We have a zoning board of appeals definition in our committees section, in our general bylaw section, that goes into more detail.
Yeah.
Should we refer to that in this?
No, I don't think so. I think what we'll probably want to do is put in, and you can actually use the same definition from your general bylaws and stick it in the definitions of your in Article 2. Just so you want to define it as what the board is and how it's appointed. But this does, this pretty much says it's according to 40A, and that tells you everything you need to know. But we can have the zoning board of appeals definition in the definitions section that could be a little more specific if you wish. I don't think it's necessary. I think people pretty much know what the zoning board of appeals is.
Right. But in the definition section, couldn't we just refer to the general bylaw?
We could.
Or you
And
could
then
just
call it a
repeat
day?
Or if it's short, you just repeat the same one.
Yeah, it's
Right.
just it's sort of long. I don't know. It's 3 or 4
Okay.
paragraphs.
All right, well,
And I think that might
we're
clutter
going to
up
get to
our
definitions
definition section.
later,
Yeah.
so we'll do that. I don't have the text in front of me, but we are mentioning the planning board now in this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because the
Well,
existing Article 12 doesn't mention the planning board, and that is defined in the general bylaw as well.
yeah, and we can also include a separate definition for a planning board in the definitions.
But I think to simplify the definitions when we get to Article 2, referring back to general bylaw definitions is fine, just so there's no
Yeah.
conflicts.
Exactly.
All right.
so the-
Anything else? Yeah, go ahead, Jessica.
This I just wanted to point out was when we were talking about special permits in section 12.5, there was a whole, it got kind of complex and intermingled with the findings that are specified in later sections of 12.5 and A and B, and I think, and E particularly. So I shortened that up and just said as the findings set forth in paragraph A, because that does state what the findings are.
Okay.
Okay, so that I just wanted to point that out. Also, we had a little discussion last time on 12.5A4, where we were talking about screening and buffering, and there was a parenthetical phrase and so on. And so I rewrote it. So this is a topic, if you will, for consideration by the special permit granting authority. And I've changed it to the character of proposed screening and buffers, including the type, dimensions, design, and materials, rather than, I think before it said screening and buffers with reference to the character. And I was just like, that's, or reference to the type, dimensions, design, and character. So rather than saying with reference to, I've just said the character of the proposed screening and buffers, including the type, dimensions, design, and materials. I think that's clearer.
That says what I think it's supposed to say.
Okay. And then the other big discussion we had was on economic impacts on the town. So this is number 7 in that list. So I changed the language rather than effect and general compatibility, the economic effect on the town. I put any economic impacts on the town and general compatibility and harmony with existing development.
That's good.
That makes sense. Okay.
Okay, good.
All right. I think that was the major changes, and then we went to site plan review, and that I think I made most of the changes. I'm still struggling with its applicability. That's in section 12.7A. And so it's applicable in all districts. And I had said commercial, but really commercial doesn't cover it all. Should that be maybe business and industrial? I wasn't sure how to say it, because you can't say non-residential because we do include multifamily uses. And commercial, I don't think covers industrial in my mind anyway.
Right,
No.
but then just add the word industrial.
Commercial and industrial, or business and industrial?
I'd say commercial, industrial, and multifamily uses.
Okay. The biggest problem that we have here, and we have to keep this in mind for the use table, is the use table is not really organized by any major categories of uses. So, there's just listings of uses and they seem to sort of overlap each other. And so one of the things we want to look for when we get to Article 4 is to really group all business uses together. So you got your retail and other things, and then industrial uses together and so forth. I think it'll make it easier when we reference things in the future. So that's, and ideally, I'd like to be able to say here, any place where site plan review is indicated in the table of uses, so that we can actually go through and say, okay, which of these uses actually require site plan approval, and then we can fix this up.
Yeah, that would be good, because and I think my draft had hoped for that, to reorganize it. But I notice in most drafts, when you look at most towns, it tells you where you're as of right or not allowed or special permit, but very rarely do you ever see anybody indicate a use that needs a site plan review. And that would be
I think it's important to have that on there,
I think that would be a great addition to it. So.
Okay, and then I think the only other 2 things were the timing, which was in subsection E of 12.7. So it'd be under procedures 3. And we had originally had 21 days and no more than 30 days. And I think we switched it from 30 to 45, just to, everybody's on board with that, right?
Yep.
Okay, so that means right now, no more than 75 days after the receipt of the site plan review application, the board has to issue its decision. Is 75 days still good? If we increase the other dates, should we go to 90 days?
Lauren?
I think 75 days is sufficient.
Okay. All right. And then the only other thing I had on my list was modifications, which is J of 12.7. and we had said, well, who decides the modifications and what are minor modifications? And I kind of finessed that and just said the planning board decides whether it's minor or not. I just left it at that. And maybe in your regulations, your site plan regulations, you could give examples of what might be minor modifications. I really, without writing it, a whole treatise on minor and moderate, it got a little dicey. So anyhow, so those were the changes. And I think I addressed everything that you had asked for.
Okay, good. Anybody else have any thoughts, comments?
Fine with me.
Oh,
Okay.
sounds good.
And I'll entertain a motion to approve going forward at town meeting with the changes to Article 12 as written through tonight by Judge Cutler.
So moved.
Second, someone?
I second.
Thank you, Cass. All right, all in favor, roll call alphabetical.
Clark Brewer, aye.
Tom Callahan, aye.
I have a question that I have to be very, it's been brought to my attention that I'm wearing a couple of hats here from the select board and also chair of the select board. And this will go before town meeting, and the select board, may on this elect to punt or to turn it over into there. So even though I would support this, I cannot support this as chair of the select board. So Judge Cutler, is there a way
I'm rolling my eyes, Jack. You're being way too cautious and careful. You do have two
I am.
hats. You have
Yes,
a hat. You have a hat on this committee, and then
Yes,
you have a hat on this.
I'm aware of that, and I want to clarify that.
Clark and I.
Jack, you're just saying you can't vote at the select board level. You can vote at this level.
Yes, I'm voting on this level.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
because the select board will have to look at it to see
Yep.
whether the board, we understand.
Yes. Right.
As
Okay.
a select
you for
board member,
explaining
you
that,
could
though.
change your mind. You could
Right.
vote for it here
Yeah.
and vote
Mhm.
against it there if you thought there was a sufficient reason to.
I am not a wishy-washy politician. So I like that idea. It's a good one.
Keep your options open.
Clark and I have formal votes to make on the planning board about all of
That's
this as
true.
well.
That's true.
And
Right.
a horrible
Right.
So
thought.
anyway,
A
I'm
horrible
voting
thought that
in
you'd
favor of
change your
this
mind.
as my comments are clear or unclear. Anyway, let's proceed.
What's
Aye.
your vote? What's your vote? All right, thank you, Cassie.
I vote yes.
Okay, good. Thank you all.
Okay, just to be clear, I'm gonna turn this into a warrant article.
Yes.
And
And-
that I'll be sending that to you for final okay before you send that off to the selectmen. Okay,
Yeah, we will probably get that all finalized in one of our February meetings before we have the public forum.
Okay.
about all of this.
And
The one thing I just noted as I was looking at the way you were editing exit 12, I think it'll be important for town meeting that should we have a handout there, we can't do color printing, but at least have the marked up version of this so that people.
yeah, I
see
mean, the
existing-
red line, the original, red
Yeah, I
line.
wouldn't, in other words, don't lose your red line versions because I think that'll be important to be our public handouts.
Okay, at the public hearing or at the town meeting? Because that could get really.
Well,
Well,
I
You
I
should have
think
it.
let's, I mean, we will have these articles ready for the public forum at the end of February. So let's shoot for that, being ready for that. I
Okay,
don't think at the review by the planning board and the other boards, we need it, but the town meeting, depending on what materials we distribute for town meeting, I'm going to guess that having the red line version so people can see the existing versus the new is going to be the best thing we can
Okay.
do for all of these articles.
It's a good idea.
yeah,
One,
Agreed.
just to suggest an alternate, it seems like we're replacing all of section 12.
Yeah,
So
No.
you could just say,
Yeah.
the following language to replace existing section 12, because we're not taking out words and adding necessarily, it's a full-on replacement. But for our warrant articles, we always have a layman's description breakdown in addition to the actual language that would go in the zoning bylaw.
Mhm.
The warrant articles each come with a brief.
Yeah,
one
layman's
to 1 to 2
description,
paragraph
brief.
explanatory paragraph that gets
Something
printed.
other
in
than the
warrant.
actual warrant article.
Right.
It will actually be printed in the warrant for people to read.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So
Let's
we're
move
done with
on.
12, right? Okay.
We're done with, so right now, at this point, we're done with 1, the repeal of 13, and with 12. So next, we're moving on to Article 8.
8.
And
Okay.
Article 8 will be, Woody, by the way, cannot be here tonight. He had some comments about definitions, but I asked him in response, do you have any further thoughts on Article 8? I have not heard from him on that. So let's just go forward with what we have. And again, Article 8 is going to come in 2 pieces. One with the changes and consolidations to the rest of it with the existing single lot exemption language, and then a separate article to change the single lot exemption language, so that if that doesn't pass, we still have our existing single lot exemption to go with the other changes. So the first part of this is all the other changes, which is consisting of articles, sections 8.1 through 8.9, consolidating, moving things around. I think we discussed these at the last meeting. There were again some edits and tweaks that needed to be made.
And so the primary commentary is found in 8.3B, structural change, extension, or alteration. And this is for a single and 2-family residential structure. The existing language basically says so long they can be expanded and altered, so long as the reconstruction, extension, or structural alteration itself complies in all respects with the dimensional regulations set forth in 5.3, other than the minimum lot area. Do you want to leave the reference to section 5.3 in there?
Well, it may change when we change the chart, but I don't see a problem with leaving it in there.
Okay, all right. And in addition to that, I added, and the special permit granting authority finds that the reconstruction, extension, or structural alteration will not increase the non-conforming nature. That was where we had sort of the question was, okay, who decides all this? And we said, no, it's got to go back to the special permit granting authority for that review. So that's how I addressed it.
Right.
Okay.
Get a finding.
And Mass General Laws, Section 6 just exists in parallel on its own, separate, and it's not referenced here.
Well, it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, then 8.5, the restoration in paragraph B. I just want to note the current bylaw says that your current site plan review applies to repair or reconstruction of a non-conforming structure in the business or light industry districts. I don't know if I'm assuming that that's okay to leave that in there. We change it to 12.7 actually.
The site plan provisions of, well, yeah, the word "a" doesn't need to be in there, but why wouldn't it just say the site plan provisions of section 12.6 will apply, period? Because then that defines.
12.7, yeah, okay.
Excuse me, then 12.6 defines what districts it's applying to.
Okay, so that we'll just 12.7. Okay.
So we'll just say 12.6 will apply, period.
Right. Okay. Then on the single lot exemption, I took out the reference to these plans endorsed prior to June 2023. That will address in a separate warrant article if we want to amend how this is amended here.
Right.
We'll further amend it. All right. And then the question was, these lots, the lot that was lawfully laid out by plan of record and so on before the effective date of the dimensional requirements. We'll probably want to put maybe an overall end date on this,
Good idea.
right?
On the existing single lot exemption?
So in other words, so going forward, let's say somebody next week records a plan and it conforms with today's requirements, but 2 years from now, you've changed those. Under this current bylaw, they're protected if they came into effect in a certain, as long as they were recorded before that change. But if we say they have to be recorded by, maybe we'll say, this is in the second warrant article for this, recorded by June 23rd.
So where are you putting that in C1?
So in C, I figure how I would have to do that. Rather than saying prior to the effective date, we'd say prior to the effective date and no later than
Okay,
a certain date, right?
okay.
Okay. All right.
Everybody understand that?
Yeah,
Sort of.
makes sense.
I just clarify what we're saying is no matter what, after June 23rd, the party's over.
Well, no,
You won't be able to come back and have new lots that rely upon this exemption. You still have 48 section 6 is going to apply,
Right.
but any special exceptions that this allows for won't attach to anything recorded after that date.
Yeah, let's not mix it up, Jack. In this particular thing, we're not putting in the June 30 date because we're keeping the existing language, just adding another.
Well, it's not the existing language, it's just reorganized, but
It's
the same.
reorganized, but the only thing we're adding to this version of it is a cutoff date on the recording of a plan. The June 30th day, about June 30, 2023, about endorsement and approval of a plan, that's coming with the amendment. That's
Well, both
Okay.
of those,
All right, I get it.
both of those are going with the amendment.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
But Tom, like,
and-
so if you're in the process right now.
You'll be
and it
fine,
hasn't-
and you might have people who rush in, get their plan recorded no matter what,
Right.
and they may
Yeah.
do that, but at
Well,
least
yeah.
going forward in 10 years, they won't be doing it.
Yeah, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. It's very likely that the fall town meeting articles are going to change dimensional requirements, or they very well could. I mean, that's what we're looking at. So, somebody who records a plan when this article passes or today, they're going to be facing a change coming down. They have a certain timeline to act to protect themselves. That's basically what's going to happen. So, all right. And then what do we have?
Finally, the last thing on it was in 8.7C, that was the abandonment section. And we added the requirement that the special permit granting authority may extend the 2-year limit if it determines that extraordinary circumstances have prevented the use and maintenance of the non-conforming structure despite good faith efforts of the property owner.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's another thing like what's a minor or major modification that maybe in a regulation
Maybe.
we could give some examples of what we think is extraordinary.
Mhm. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So
All right.
that's-
So anybody have any other questions, comments about the Article 8 amendments? Okay, then we'll take a motion to approve a warrant article adopting these changes as amended through tonight. Somebody want to make that motion?
So moved.
A second, please.
Second,
Okay. All in favor?
Clark Brewer, aye.
Tom Callahan, aye.
Jack Creighton, aye.
Cassie Malatesta, aye.
Okay, great, thank you. All right.
Okay, and
so then
like
part-
as with Article 12, this has to be converted to a warrant article, so.
Right, and we are going to do a public forum on this one at the end of this month, so we'll just what you have written here with the other little tweak that we just talked about tonight, that can be our discussion document for that forum.
Okay, do you want both those warrant articles?
Yeah, we're gonna just, I mean, the single lot exemption is gonna be the hot topic of conversation, not this one.
All right, okay.
All right, so now separately, single lot exemption reform. I don't know, I don't have it. Gotta
All
find
right.
it. But
So you should have the red line comparison and the Article 3 version 1 dated January 4th.
okay, let's see what we have. January. I have too many.
I'm not sure I got this one.
I thought we did, but
I can't find it.
no,
on-
and you know what? I'm not finding it either, but Judge Cutler, can you screen share it, or Lauren, one of you?
Oh, I mean, you hit my level of competence on the computer. No.
Cassandra, do you have the versions that they're discussing? I had forwarded all the versions I had to Cassandra so she could have them on file.
Yes, well, hopefully it's the right one.
Yes.
No, if it's
Which,
January 4th, it was
January
distributed.
4th, Article 3.
so I have two labeled Article 3. One is the comparison red line and one is version 1.
Yes. I don't know which one works for the committee to see.
Wait, are we talking about Article 3 or 8?
Article 3.
Oh. So the single lot exemption change that we just did, that's gonna come as the separate article?
With Article 8.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
right, so we just approved both of them then, I'm sorry.
Well, no, you just approved one. We haven't done the warrant article for the other one, but you approved the concept of
Oh,
what we're
okay,
gonna do.
okay, all right.
Yeah.
All right, so, but you're gonna show us then two
I will
warrant
give you the
articles.
final warrant article, right?
All right,
right.
and that I'd like to have ready for the forum on the 30th.
Hopefully I'll have it ready for you next week.
Okay, good.
And I did find this, that we got it at 2:33 on the 4th of January.
Yeah, I can't remember how much stuff I forwarded and what I didn't forward. So, all right, so now Article 3, this is the article regarding districts.
Yeah, this is the
Um,
establishment of the districts.
All right, we have not discussed this prior, so
No.
let's go through it.
Do you want me to screen share, Tom?
Not, well, yeah, maybe that'll be.
Yeah, I'd like to see, because I'm still not finding it.
Yeah, all right.
What article is this? Article?
This is Article 3, which is our districts, description of our districts and the maps and things.
Okay, I have.
And, in a nutshell, from what I gather, we're not changing names of districts. That's coming probably later, again in the fall.
Right, and we're taking out the, what it was called, the cluster development district, because it's not an overlay district, so we
Right.
just eliminated that.
Yeah, so the thought being here that it's really, once we get again into the table of uses, anything we might do about consolidating the districts in the harbor, consolidating commercial districts on 3A, that's all going to be tied into that. So we're really not making any changes in nomenclature at the moment, but
Right.
other than what Judge Cutler just said with cutting a misidentified overlay district out of the picture.
Yeah.
I also note there was an exchange today between Lauren and Judge Cutler about the maps. I guess not everything is shown on one single map at the moment.
Yeah, we're gonna have to, I think Lauren and I are gonna have to put our heads together on how we wanna get
Yeah,
those.
so the reference to the maps needs to be updated here.
Yeah,
And then at
yeah.
some point, whoever is our vendor on the zoning map, and again,
Right.
this will probably be done after the fall, after we make other changes, that
Right.
we'll just have to get a single map
Yeah.
redone and updated.
Yeah, so I
Last,
I'm sorry, I just wanted to point out, and this is totally up to you as to whether or not you want to do that. I had said here, we were calling the regular zoning districts, the underlying zoning districts, just zoning districts, and the others with the overlay districts. I was referring to them as the base zoning districts. and then the overlay districts as the overlay zoning districts. Does
that's
that
fine.
work for you?
That's fine with me.
Yeah, I get it.
Sure.
Okay.
Last time we made zoning map changes, they were done in-house, by the, town's project manager.
Which we don't have one at the moment, so.
Right, so we don't have someone on staff who currently does GIS work, but I've already reached out actually to do, ironically, the same firm who did our map in 2002. That firm is still, we've been using them, Amory Engineers, as
Yeah.
a peer review consultant, and he's actually branching out into his own firm, which is a story for another day, but we have someone already teed up to do this for us, and it would certainly behoove us to have it all in one map rather than
Yeah.
trying to piece everything together.
Yeah, again, I think we need to wait to the fall to see what other changes we make, and then, probably a very simple housekeeping in spring 24 is adoption of a new map, so.
Lauren, I think that
Okay.
if you want another bid, I think Stantec could provide that work too, if you had to bid it out to multiple options. That work for the GIS mapping.
Yeah, well, if we have to bid it out, sure.
Yeah.
All right, Judge Cutler, go ahead and,
And just a quick question about this. It looks like residence, on my copy, residence A, in residence A, the A is crossed out.
Yeah.
Should that go back in?
Where's that?
It's the first one on my copy. A is crossed out and I can see it's.
Oh, it shouldn't be. It should just be, yeah, you're
Yeah,
right.
A.
Yes, good,
Okay.
good catch, yes.
See, I can catch easy ones like that. Just one more thing about the zoning map.
that's why we have you, Clark.
Yeah, one more thing about the zoning map itself. I think it could be much more readable with maybe some tweaks to the color selections. Like we have sort of like a
Yeah.
medium green and a dark green for
Yeah.
residents A and B, and it's kind of hard to tell the difference. Water areas, some of them are in zoning districts and some aren't. Inland and
Yeah, I mean,
non-inland.
sometimes you can use cross hatching or, dots over the
Yep.
colors. I mean, there are various things. I think the mapping person. can
Well,
come
I
up
wouldn't want to get too fancy with it, but I think, there's some basic edits and revisions that I'd call in improvements to the zoning map, which would be great. And I think the planning board just has to vote on it. I don't believe that's a vote at town meeting. We vote on the underlying changes at town meeting, but in terms of incorporating those into the zoning map, I don't believe those have to be voted in at town meeting.
No.
Lauren, do you recall, you got a quizzical look on your face?
I don't know that to be accurate, but I would certainly look to get more information before I committed to a definite answer. I do think that any changes you make to the official zoning map is a town meeting item.
vote. It's a vote, yes.
Right, well, you
Yeah.
vote on the underlying changes, like when we changed the zoned industrial rail spur to open space.
Right. Oh, you mean like a
Then
zoning
in terms
article?
of changing the actual map.
Oh, you mean the physical character, how it's presented, the form of the map.
Right,
No,
the
I-
actual updated map itself. I
Well,
don't
you're
believe
not-
that's a
yeah.
vote at town meeting.
Do it,
Well, look, the bottom line is in the spring of 24, we'll be voting on a new map. And before then, we can decide however it looks like in the color palette. And
Mhm.
Well,
Clark,
again, are you sure?
Clark, we're gonna be voting on a whole map, so the map will include a new color palette, it'll include a lot of new things, districts renamed, maybe boundary, probably not, but we have to create this MBTA overlay district, for example, so it's gonna have new stuff. And the new stuff can include a new color palette, so
Again, if we
I
could just
appreciate-
confirm whether
I'm glad
it
you-
needs to
you
be a
could-
vote of town meeting or it's just the underlying zoning changes.
I think, stylistic matters, I don't think are of substantive that need to be voted on the town meeting.
Well, the question is it required? And I didn't believe that it
Yes.
was. I think the underlying change is.
Yes, the underlying change, we have to do that, right? As far as how we chose stylistically, how we choose to lay out the map and colors and cross hatching, I think that is, that's
Yeah,
really,
town meeting doesn't.
we don't do that.
I mean,
Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
This Article 3, as we're changing it, is referring to 3 maps. When we consolidate it into one new map, that requires a change to the language of this bylaw. So it will
Right.
require a town meeting vote
Yeah.
to
Well, for me,
change the
Just the
map.
bylaw, not the
And
actual
you get
map.
with a new date
No,
and-
well, no, but the map is going to the map is going to incorporate changes possibly that we adopt in the fall, in this town
Understood.
meeting. and the
Understood.
fall
But,
town meeting.
but
So-
again, you don't vote on the map, you vote on the
Alright.
underlying change, and the
Yes.
map is a
All right,
representation of
yes, but
that.
the underlying changes are reflected in a map, so
Yes.
it's kind of semantics, but let's
But
not
we
get
would,
off course.
but we would have a subset, I mean, we would probably have for a representation for the floor of town meeting, but not a fully updated map, a representation of what gets changed in a zoning district for illustrative purposes.
I think you can decide that when you're preparing the map.
Yeah, I think the spring 24 vote on this will show the whole new map. And we'll have a nice big thing, map to throw up on the screen in the auditorium for everybody to look at with all its new color palette and its new districts, names, and whatever else we've decided to do to it.
So that would entail actually doing the revisions as a revision for the floor of town meeting to vote
Yes,
on.
because we're finding now, as we're looking at Article 3, that our maps are in 3 places. And
They're actually in 4 or 5. Some of them are.
4 or
listed.
5, all right, 4 or 5 places, but because we are also anticipating further changes at the fall town meeting, there's no sense commissioning Amory or anybody else to draw a new map yet until we're finished with that. We certainly will be able to operate it between now and next spring, but next spring we will be adopting a new consolidated single map for everything we've done. That's, as I understand, what the game plan is. So, am I wrong about that, Judge Cutler? I don't think so, so.
No, you'll have to see how much information you can get onto a single map, and you probably can't. You may not be able to get it all onto one map, but
Okay.
you can certainly try. It may just need a different scale.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's,
Yeah, we
you know.
might have, we
Yeah.
might have a, like a submap that's just 3A
Mhm,
drawn at a bigger scale so people can see what we're doing to 3A or the village or the harbor.
right, and that doesn't require town meeting to blow up a piece.
Right,
That's-
right.
Yeah.
Right, that would be
Anyway.
for illustrative purposes, so for the underlying change, but not the actual map
Right, but
itself.
we're not making any substantive underlying change at this town meeting.
We will
If for example.
I understand, okay.
Yeah, if
we've-
for
we've
example,
talked about it.
I think this horse is dead. Can we-
Yeah, all right,
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah.
know, let's go on. All right, Judge Cutler, if you could just walk us through.
Okay,
what you're
can we
doing here.
scroll this a little bit, or? Mine is not scrolling. I don't know what's going on here. Okay, so we got to this, we're past the zoning map, right? Okay, so I'm just, yeah, so all of those are the zoning maps. So all boundaries, notations, and other data are gonna be on that, okay? And it's kept on file in the office of the town clerk. You don't need, the authenticity will be identified by the signature of the town clerk. I mean, that's a matter of evidence. And the town clerk has a certification that he or she will put on a map if asked for an official copy. So it doesn't need to be in here. Okay, and okay, moving down to the next, let's see. Okay, so these are the rules for applying the boundaries. A lot of this is crossed out because it got out of order, but really we want to go down to A33A. So where a district boundary, it says is indicated as following a street or a
Right.
whatever. But I just sort of changed the language a little bit, and I just said if it's appears to follow the street, because again, we've got a strange situation when you have a lot of information shown on a small map, you may not always get it as accurate. So when it appears to follow. Then the district boundary coincides with the center line of the right of way. And when a district boundary, and I separated out when it appears to follow a water course or other body of water, the district boundary runs through the middle of it. And my question, I have it highlighted, is where such a boundary approximates a town boundary, then it runs to the limits of the jurisdiction of the town. I mean, we can leave it in there. I don't know if it's really necessary, but it's up to you.
Where is that? Can we scroll to see it?
That's at the end of A. I have it
Oh,
highlighted.
yeah. I see that. Okay.
That's existing language. I thought it was, we can leave it in if you want. I just didn't know if there was any particular issue that you were worried about.
No.
Okay, so we'll leave it.
In some cases, you have lots that are created that straddle the
But our zoning can't go into the next town.
Right.
I mean, it's just kind of, sort of goes without saying, can't.
Yeah.
Can't go into the next town, but that's
No.
fine. Just leave it.
In deference to the authors in 1955, we'll keep it in.
We'll leave it in, right, okay. Again, I just separated out the references to the sidelines of a street or railroad right of way from the reference to the sideline of, or the line parallel to a shoreline or water course. I wasn't sure whether shoreline was really the right word. I don't know, Lauren, if you have a better word or.
Was it mean low tide?
Well, I mean, we could say the bank or the, so the low tide line wouldn't necessarily show up on the map. What we're talking about is if you're reading that zoning map and you see a zoning district boundary is kind of following along the edge of that water course, it's really not the sideline of the water course. It's some other word, but I'm not exactly sure. Run parallel to the.
I'll double check that,
yeah,
and I'd be happy to get back to you.
Okay, all right, see if we can
I'm
get
gonna
a
write
better-
a note down for that one.
Yeah,
But I know exactly what you're referring to, and we need to clarify this because it could get very complicated in a seaside community where
yes, yeah.
Well, why? I don't believe you can zone in the water, and I know that's come up with some property a long time ago, but
Well, you can zone in other than the ocean. You can zone in a river, or,
Yeah.
down in the middle of the river,
well-
or a pond or something, so that's.
I'm perfectly fine leaving it for you and Lauren to pick the right word.
Okay.
Maybe
Right.
one of our neighboring communities has solved this problem.
Well, one
Okay.
thing that might be related in your thinking would be solar panels are being installed on water areas because they're unshaded and they're flat. So in some cases, in some parts of the country, that they're floating solar panels out on bodies of water, and that it might be possible for Erin River Reservoir. I mean, I don't know. We're Straits Pond or Lily Pond, but certainly impossible for the ocean.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
And these rules are just basically a little rewording of what is already there. If it appears to follow a property line, it coincides with the property line. If it's not covered by any of these things, then the location is determined by the distance in feet from other lines, as shown on the map. And so it's pretty much what you already require. It's just a little
Honey,
bit.
in 30+ years, I've never seen a zoning district boundary line issue ever presented.
I have, unfortunately, it does get it can get dicey, but so, okay, all right, so going on to E, oh, that's also the thing we have to update is the elevation above is the distance above mean sea level based upon, and I know you told me last time, Lauren rather, but we have to get that updated. And then I don't think we need the reference to the map containing benchmarks. I think that's probably not necessary.
The map of 1929 needs a date update.
We need an update. Is that really what we're using? Okay.
Okay.
All right. All right. So. Oh, this was the confusing one, and we talked a little bit about this last time. This is where the zoning district boundary divides a lot. So I've said when a base zoning district divides a lot, at the time the boundary line is adopted, the use regulations for either district may be extended 50 feet into the portion of the lot in the other district, right? Provided that the lot has frontage on a street in the less restricted district. Do you want to keep that? That's existing.
What does less restricted district mean?
So let's say you have a business district and residence district situation. The business district is the less restricted district. So if they're gonna extend 50 feet, this would be if they're gonna extend 50 feet into any portion of the lot, going business into residence or residence into business, that lot would have to have 50 feet of or have the minimum amount of frontage on a street in the business district.
I wonder if is anybody aware of any part in town where it's split between any one property is split between two residential districts?
Yeah, I mean, I have one, but you know, I think where this gets more applicable is in the village and out on 3A in those.
Yeah, and I was thinking if you could, rather than the confusing term of less restricted, if we could just make a distinction between the commercial and the residential district. But if there's a place where two residential districts are at issue, then that wouldn't cover that.
Same issue comes up.
Yeah, same
But
issue.
almost all these lots are going to have frontage anyway.
But the question
Might be
is,
some rare circumstance where it
do you
doesn't.
need frontage on the less restricted
Yeah,
district?
I'm wondering if there's a way, I mean, certainly in the business districts in 3A, if, you know, there's going to be a business use, we want the frontage and the access to be through the business district, not through the residential district.
Okay, you could say that provided that where you're extending 50 feet into a less restricted district, the lot has frontage in that less restricted district.
Yeah, but again, I think the layman's question is going to be what is less restrictive and how do we define, why is a business district quote unquote less restrictive? I'd almost be more specific.
Yeah, because it's a hierarchy of, you know, districts. And so the residence A district is going to be less restricted than B and so forth down the line.
All right. Well, you know, our land use boards, you know, going forward are going to have to understand that.
Well, they've always had, this is language that's still in the bylaw.
Yeah, but that doesn't, well, I mean, you see two planning board members asking what it means. That doesn't, you know, because we've never confronted, well, in our terms, there's possibly people that have, but so I wouldn't have, you know, gravitated toward automatically saying the business district was the less restrictive, but.
Okay, let me see if I can work on that.
I'm just thinking, you know, it has frontage on a street, you know, and again, it's adding language and I don't like to do that, but you know, in the case of a lot with both a commercial and a residential district, the frontage must be in the commercial district.
What would be wrong with just saying a lot has frontage on the, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, there must be something that we can replace less restricted with
Okay, let me look.
is a little bit clearer.
Okay, I will look for that.
I don't think this thing happens very often, though.
No, and where it does happen more than probably more than not would be along 3A.
You know, what's interesting is the exclusion of the water resource district. Basically, that's like 7/8 of the town. So
Well,
you're proposing to pull that out?
I'm proposing actually to pull out all the overlay districts, because really the overlay districts are very special districts. And would you
Right.
want like a regular, let's say you had a lot that had a water resource district line running through it, so not the whole lot was in the water resource district, and they said, well, I want to have my normal base district zoning up to 50 feet into the water resource area, so
Yeah.
ignore the water resource area. I don't think you want to do that.
Right. And really the water resource district, you know, it calls out, you know, gas stations, underground tanks, all kinds of things that
Right, so you
are
don't want
related to
Right.
the water resource maintenance and improvement protection, where this you know particular extension doesn't really relate.
Exactly. All right.
And
so
I
we'll
must
take-
admit, I've read it over and over, not quite 100 times, but 50 to see how it applies, and it doesn't quite seem to make sense. In fact, the water resource district that was put in place in the late 90s
Right.
because of the Graham waste dump, an
Mhm.
active landfill.
Okay, so we'll take that
Think-
out. So it
think-
only
I
applies to
think
the
that's
base.
great. Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me.
Right.
And thinking ahead, if we create an overlay district for the MBTA compliance,
You don't want it to extend, right?
we're not going to allow this, by taking this out, we would not allow that zoning to extend beyond the boundaries of the overlay.
Right, right.
Okay, good.
Okay, then we move down to F. And we have, okay, an overlay district boundary, where is it? Oh, that was taken out, sorry, that was. I'm sorry, this was in relation to the floodplain district boundary being determined by the distance in feet from other lines, but I think that it doesn't matter. That was taken care of, so never mind about that. That was all out. Okay,
This is you get confused by all these red lines, even though
that's
you
it.
wrote,
I
even though
know.
you wrote them, you get confused by.
I know, so we're done with that.
Okay,
Not a lot of big, heavy duty changes. I will look over again at that land divided issue and see if I can come up with some better language for that.
okay. I will subject to that further review. Does anybody have any other comments, questions about the proposed changes to Article 3? If not, I'll entertain a motion to accept these changes for the warrant.
But I think
We want to
we have
wait
to-
until
we
you,
want to wait for that
Wait,
one.
all right, fine. We'll put that on the next agenda
Right.
item.
And the map references.
All right, and then, so next is Article 6, and Judge Cutler and I discussed this the other day. And my initial hope was, oh, you're gonna change this laundry list of signs and everything, but we are probably, that isn't happening, but one of the things we do have some inconsistencies in the sign regulations with respect to how high they can be, how close to a property line they can be. And one of the things Judge Cutler and I discussed is that when we do the dimensional table, we will probably want to add a line for signs so that we can provide height limits, setback limits, and things that do not exist now. But as far as tonight, Judge Cutler wasn't ready with any other suggested changes. We were going to take that up at the next meeting on the 23rd.
So I just had some questions. I had some questions.
Well,
that
she
I
had some, yeah, she needs some feedback, but
Yeah.
so go ahead.
Okay, so in your current sign, well, first of all, I looked back to see the sign regulations seem to be only part there, as Tom had mentioned, there were not a lot of dimensional requirements for signs. And so I looked, and it turns out this was seems to have been originally a general bylaw. So it really just regulated how many signs could go on a lot and what kind of signs in town. And then it got moved into the zoning bylaw at some later time. So I think maybe it was never really a big issue in town that these were too high or too big or too many signs. It wasn't clear. So I didn't want to tinker with it too much. I'm going to more organize it more than anything else. I wanted to know if you would like to exempt government signs, that is town, state, US government signage on properties owned and used by those entities.
Well, the town in terms of temporary signs throws up these neon lit things to announce town meetings or town dump facility.
On a trailer.
I don't have a problem with those. Just so everybody knows, though, if you ever been to a highway interchange out in hinterlands and you see 200-foot tall signs for the Gulf Station, we theoretically could have that in town because we don't have a height limit. But
I'm glad you brought it up. It seems like
nobody's abused it, but it is
billboards
a
and
risk.
large electronic signs we might consider not
Well, you don't
allowing.
allow electronic signs. You don't allow moving signs, flashing signs, changing signs, any of that. So
Okay.
They're
you're
static.
covered there. You don't allow neon signs.
What about
if they're
billboards?
visible. You say no billboards, but you don't define billboards. So
Yeah.
I'm going to include billboards
Yes.
as off-premise signs that are not permitted unless they're temporary event signs or temporary signs. And if they're not accessory to the property on which they're located, they're not allowed in town.
Right.
Yes.
In some
That's-
cases, like construction companies will put big graphics on the side of their trailer that's the size of a billboard.
Well, that's, you don't allow too many, I don't think you allow mobile signs in the business district, or you do, I'm sorry, you allow signs on trucks that are parked at a business property. It was a little bit.
Yeah.
I had a little question about what that was. I mean, some towns say if you're gonna permanently, unless the vehicle is registered and is actually used, you can't just park it there and put a sign on it,
Sure.
But obviously local people, business people who have signage on their trucks, I mean, that's sort of normal.
Yeah, you see in Boston, these trucks driving around that with, their mobile billboards.
Yeah,
We
you
don't,
don't
we
want
don't
the
see
sign-
that here, but
No, you don't see
occasionally
that
at like Curtis Liquors, some liquor company will park out front and play jingles all day. It doesn't
Technically
really,
not allowed. Technically not allowed, but so there were some strange questions that I found. For example, lights. There's nothing, strings of lights. You don't prohibit them in the residential districts, but in the business and industrial districts, you can only have strings of lights during the holiday season from Thanksgiving to January. Is there a reason for that? Are lights, do you want to continue to treat strings of lights as signs? It's perfectly legitimate to do that. Question is it all right to do it every place else, or is it an exempt thing that you don't need a permit? You can just put up lights for holiday purposes, for temporary purposes. So these are things that I'm going to highlight. I won't change from what you have. I'm just reorganizing, but I will highlight some options for you in the next go round to see if, because I know, who knows if town meeting has the stomach to take too many changes here. I don't want to open up too much of a can of worms on that. The
Right, but
political side.
if we're antiquated in our approach to signage, I think it doesn't hurt. I don't think it's a big lift for town meeting do
I-
what might make
But you
make
might want
sense
more comprehensive.
and bring
I
our,
would, I would suggest that we see what Judge Cutler comes up with and give it some thought.
Yeah,
I do think that the traffic has increased on 3A and has increased to the point where it now becomes economically desirable to have larger signs on 3A. So I think we're going to have to address that. But quite honestly, I can't get my arms around it right now. But I think that Judge Cutler's suggestion that she give us some options and then we think about it and get back on that, because I think it needs to be addressed. So that would be my.
And in terms of the workload on the strain on the mind of town meeting, we are really gonna sock them in the fall. So, if there's some, I don't think the sign issue is gonna prove to be super controversial about any
you
changes.
have businesses.
And I think if we explain to people, we don't have size limits.
Right,
We don't have setback limits. I think people can understand that.
right.
And we can throw in a added column to the dimensional table right now before we do the wholesale change of the dimensional table. But I don't think that'll be super controversial.
right?
As far as exempting government buildings, my only thought about that is I wouldn't want them to go crazy on size or height either.
Well, you really can't govern the US government and
Well, that's
state
fine.
buildings, but the town is really the exempt.
Yeah, but we have what, one US government facility in town, I think, so.
Post office is exempt from local.
Yeah,
zoning.
we don't, nobody's abusing it, so I'm not
Right.
too worried about it, but,
I don't think the town is likely to abuse it. They might abuse it and it would be short-lived, very short.
yeah, the only thing you can envision for the town is if we build a new police or fire station on 3A and they suddenly want a neon sign, like the Boston Police
What about
headquarters
the,
has.
like, what about the Situate example of their police fire?
Yeah, Situate has
flashing
a,
blue,
Situate,
flashing red.
yeah, they have a big blue and red, blue for the police and red for the fire neon sign out in front of their new fancy building on 3A. Do we want that? I don't
No.
know. But anyway, David is here. David, welcome for joining us. We have, just to bring you up to speed, we've approved warrant articles for changes to Article 12, 8, and 3. We are discussing signs. We are punting on signs till at least the next meeting until we get some recommendations from Judge Cutler about that. But we were pointing out that we have no dimensional restraints on signs at the moment. And that's something we have to address.
Yes, and Judge, keep in mind that I think the sense of the town is we don't want a lot of signs.
Right.
Right.
But
Except for the McDonald's franchise.
just may disagree with you.
That Mr. Callahan is putting up. Oh, I'm sorry, Tom.
No, I'm very fond of McDonald's.
Tom, could David replace me as a vote if I needed to hop off right now? Would you still have a quorum?
Sure.
Is it for the excuse of childcare? That's an excusable reason to leave the meeting. So,
I just haven't, I'm sitting in my driveway right now. I
Okay.
haven't been inside yet. And when I go inside, I'll have to put my phone on mute. Not be able to vote.
okay, that's fine.
That-
All right, thanks for being here though, Cassie. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thank you. Nice work, everyone. Thanks.
Thanks, Cass.
So
All
the
right,
other
so
big
the other thing we talked about, I don't know if you want to get into political signs.
political signs, yeah. So you have a very broad definition of political signs. It's not just campaign signs and issues that are going to be on the ballot for town meeting or whatever. You also allow, I think, what is it? Ideological thought. It is.
You like practice random acts of kindness, something like that.
The expressing the view of the owner or occupant on a matter of public concern, which is fine. And actually that overcomes a lot of issues with the US Constitution. Basically, you're saying political signs are okay.
Viewpoint expression is fine.
Viewpoint expression, no permit required. What you don't have is any limit on the number, the size of these signs. They can be permanent. They are not necessarily temporary. So I was telling Tom, we have a situation in the town where I live where somebody painted a huge political sign on their fence. And it's probably 8 feet high and about 20 feet long, and it's totally visible from the public way. You know, and it's up forever, basically.
Right.
So the question is, do you want to limit the political sign to two parts? One would be accessory, or rather temporary political signs, which would be campaign signs and, you know,
Mhm.
that are coming before a town meeting or whatever. And those would be basically unlimited as to time, but they couldn't be permanent structures. And then you have these political thoughts, which you also have to add in religious or other protected speech opportunities. And do you want to say you can have only one sign, or, you know, it can't be larger than the signs that are allowed on the property otherwise? That would be permissible. So in the residential district, the signs really can't be more than about 6 square feet, which is fine. But then in the business districts, you can go up to 40 square feet, and it can be a permanent political sign.
Again,
do you
we
want-
haven't had, yeah, we haven't had people abuse that, and even during the last presidential election where there were a lot of, you know, giant signs for presidential candidates. We didn't see them along 3A or anywhere else, but
Yeah.
in Norwell recently, there was a guy on Grove Street. I don't know if anybody comes, you know, into Cohasset like I do, in the back way through Norwell and the back corner of Situate, and he had political signs all over, flags expressing a certain political viewpoint. I thought they're not there anymore, certainly not in the numbers. And I thought Norwell did something to crack down on that. And I don't know if that's something, Cassandra, Lauren, we can find out from Lauren, if anything was done from a town enforcement point of view about that. And, you know, maybe their bylaw addresses this kind of issue, and that's why they went after this guy. But I thought I read that it had become an issue, that the town thought the number of signs and the fact that it wasn't at the time, you know, they weren't being put up during the political campaign period, that they were a little bit excessive. And I thought the town went after him for it. I don't know if you can research. Yeah, it was on Grove Street as you're coming in off of 53. Yeah.
I think it might make sense to put a duration, like a 6 months temporary sign for your own
I don't
census
see how you
plus
could.
political things, because you really don't need them. If it's Creighton for Board of Selectmen, Creighton for president, then you really don't need them for years and years.
The
Look,
problem is it's
Clark,
not.
I was about to offer you the position of Secretary of State, but if you pick this up, you're out.
Hey,
Well, but let's also be careful if religious signs are, you know,
Yes,
the
churches, yep.
churches have
And
signs.
No,
then-
if we don't have to, we don't see any abuse. We're
Mhm.
fortunate to be in a kind of town where people will do that, but they take it down. I just don't want to get into that, you know,
Yeah.
correct.
Well, I want to prevent things before they happen.
I think that'll,
one thing I've noticed it also is people putting signs up that's not on public, that's on public property, that's not even
Well,
on their own
that's-
well,
property. like
they get
the
removed.
seal coating guy and the tree guy.
Oh, well, those are illegal. And however,
Illegal.
let's keep one thing in mind. We have a heavy lift to get this zoning. And we want to focus on getting the zoning. If there's an issue on signs later on, let's address it then. But let's kind of focus on what we can get done and get done quickly. So extraneous things, however they might need to be taken care of at some point. I think for the purposes of what we're trying to do here, let's stick to what we need to do and get it done. I just don't want to throw, because somebody who's opposed to the whole thing is going to make that a big issue.
Right. The only other thing I can suggest is that we make it very clear that if a sign is permitted on a property, so let's say you say in the residential district, you can have, you know, 2 signs and they can point to the owner and occupant and, you know, they have a home occupation and they can identify it. If you're allowed to have a sign on your property under the bylaw, you can substitute any protected non-commercial speech on that sign face instead of what we said. So instead of advertising your home occupation, if you're allowed to have a home occupation sign, if instead you want to put, you know, Jesus saves, or, you know, God bless America, or whatever, you can do that.
Mhm. Well, I
But
don't
you
think
can't
we
have
need-
a second sign to do it.
I don't think for now,
Yeah.
I just don't see the upside of dealing with that, because the last thing we need is some, was about to say nut job, but perhaps I don't want to use those. But somebody making a big deal out of this and grandstanding, and we want to
Yeah.
do what we're here to do.
Well, I can appreciate that, but if you're going to get this through the Attorney General, we have to make sure that it doesn't in any way suggest
Oh, I agree.
that the sign bylaw prevents the exercise of free speech.
Oh,
That's
that's
what
exactly
I'm trying
right.
to get,
That's-
is to make it neutral as possible.
I mean,
Yeah.
I think it makes
They-
sense
they
to
all-
give Judge Cutler some feedback on the issues. So when she gets into it, she can take those into account. There's 2 examples that I wanted to bring up. One is Mary Lou's News painted their curbs, their corporate color out on 3A. And one question would be, is that a sign where it's incorporated into the, you know, as well as the Stop and Shop gas station was a beige that was their corporate color, and I believe the whole gas station fascia panel was considered a sign. And it might sound counterintuitive, but I think that sometimes you can run into trouble with those examples on what the intent is.
Honestly, if I want to be totally honest with you, I think you should hire an expert in signs to help you evaluate what you need going forward in the future, to make sure you have the best, you know, best sign design regulations and so forth. But for now, don't forget, there is site plan approval. So the planning board is going to be looking at the signage that's being put up on the property. So at least we'll be able to
Yeah.
reduce the size of something that's unseemly. And so I
I
think you
second
got
that.
there.
I think that's a great idea.
All
And
right.
by the way, the big sign was John Rosenthal's sign on the Mass Pike. And what, and that was a big, and I haven't seen John in years. I used to know him pretty well.
My thought in this, number one, Jack, is not to wait for a problem to happen.
Uh,
Number
Well, let's
2,
find out what.
all right,
let's-
no, all right, that's fine, but
That's
we do
okay.
need dimensional regulations, and I think we should.
Oh,
do
I
this.
think that we should, yes.
All right, and I think we can do that at this town meeting, and to the extent, if we want to get a consultant, that's fine, and if we think going into the political arena will possibly poison the rest of the town meeting, then this may be the one issue that I would put off to a 3rd town meeting in the spring of '24 by itself. I certainly don't want this issue poisoning the fall. I think would be better dealt with now, but to the extent you think it might poison this town meeting, then fine. The substantive part of what we regulate can be put off for a while, but the dimensional stuff has to be dealt
Oh,
with
no, I think,
immediately.
don't get me
Right.
wrong. I think we should
So
have,
if there's guidance to Judge Cutler, clean up what needs cleaning.
yes,
Let's even add to our current dimensional table if we need
Yes.
to, some dimensional height, size, setback requirements. And then, you know, Lauren, you'll tell us if there is a sign expert in the planet Earth and a sign bylaw expert.
They're out there.
And then if that's the one place we're gonna get into political speech and religious speech, and we don't want it poisoning the rest of the bylaw, then that might be the one article that gets passed off to a 3rd town meeting.
Well, let's see
because
what we can come
that
up with.
part of it isn't critical. The dimensional part is critical.
Yes, I think we need to do the
The
dimensional.
substance of, how, how much we regulate the political speech and time limits, size limits of signs. If that's controversial, let's just deal with that as a standalone subject sometime in the future. It's not
Right.
critical that we deal it now. Although I do, I think the world is changing. And, I also don't want to just say, oh, there's been no problems to date. Yeah, I can rely on that for another year, but, eventually we need to be proactive and making changes that we think need made so we can prevent the kind of offensive stuff we've been lucky enough not to confront from ever happening. And then this political climate and everything, things are changing, and we will see this at some point. Somebody will put up a giant sign for some given politician at some time, and it's, we're not immune to that stuff. So that's
But
my
also there's an
Anyway,
suggestion.
there's an
let's move on.
aspirational.
Let's just move on this.
All
One
right.
simple solution is to say, and any sign has to.
Just quickly, there's an aspirational part where some towns do their signage really great. And in addition, we've had some discussions about wayfinding signage. And I don't think it hurts to roll those into the discussion.
Oh,
Hey. Hi.
She's advertising for some panda bear. Let me see. All right, so that's
All
the
right.
approach. We're doing
Yeah.
something. I think you got some guidance what we're gonna do
Yes, I
now.
do. Yes, I think I'm
We'll
good,
look for
yeah.
somebody for a study on the substance and deal with the substance.
I
really
think
with the future.
quickly from me, I mean, when it comes to the signs, the whole law about signs, I mean, that is constantly changing and evolving. So it's not static. We can have kind of the law as it is today, but that one is definitely one that's constantly being challenged and pushed and pulled in every direction. But I would agree that you just need some basic dimensional requirements, and the dimensional requirements are it's not to limit the speech, but it's also for safety reasons and stuff as well.
Oh, yeah.
Where if you've got corners, you can't see around the corner because someone's got a big, so the dimensional requirements are basically there for mostly public safety and also view corridors, things like that. So I think that could easily be done, and then we just go from there, regarding the rest of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Particularly if the commercial districts allow 40-foot signs, one of the setbacks should be from a corner. An intersection, so there are no sight problems.
Yeah.
But, all right. That
One other small question. So I've never heard this used before. An unlettered cloth flag is permitted in
What?
a business district. So you have a provision that says, in all the business districts, each premises may display one unlettered cloth flag no larger than 20 feet. And it can be extended over the sidewalk so many feet to the curb line. And the lettered flags, but however, lettered flags may be displayed as a temporary sign. So I'm not sure.
So
what
that means you can put up a temporary open or sales sign.
Mm-hmm.
You
But
can
an
you can put up any other kind of flag.
Yeah, that's
and
lettered,
maybe it's-
Tom.
Huh?
That's lettered.
That's lettered.
Yeah, no, I know. Sale and open are lettered and they're temporary.
They're temporary, but
Other
a
cloth
decorative sign
signs, other cloth flags are allowed, apparently.
without a message on them.
Without a message.
Without a message. Okay,
So
that's what.
a business logo, I assume, although that might have a letter, but
So if that's not a sign, it can't be regulated under sign bylaw.
It's a weird one. Well, why keep it?
well, maybe it was, you go to car dealers and they have these humongo
Yep.
Yeah,
American flags. Maybe, it's just dealing with American flags, not to be some humongo distracting size.
I think it has to do with more adding flair to the whatever the property is to get your attention of what's going on, and I think that's where the unlettered part comes from. So just as Tom was coming up with the that's exactly what I was thinking, was car dealerships or automotive. So you'll sometimes see them now with Dunkin' Donuts where they'll have those flags. They're not necessarily lettered, but they could have the either the logo or a coffee cup on them or something like that, and just have, be stuck in the front when they're doing some special day.
Well, you
There's all,
could have those things now, those big tall things with the wind blows up. and it's
oh
a big-
yes, the big,
It's a big dummy or something.
yeah,
you
the
know,
big
it's
people that blow up or something that
people-
wave
Yeah.
to you.
I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah,
what you call
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Okay.
It's yeah, for grab attention.
Okay, well, I'll leave it in. I just didn't know what it was, and if you all know what it
Yeah.
is, I will leave it in.
Right.
Yeah, but
Thank you.
I'm sure the open and sale flags are abused, but I guess
Oh.
the end of the day, who cares? But
Right. Okay, all right. So I think I have my marching orders on this, and I will do my best to get it to you very soon. And then, so I'll get you the warrant articles and these, this draft and the changes. I'll redo the Article 3. So that's what we'll have for next time.
Good.
yeah, so for next time, we're anticipating Article 3. We're anticipating Articles 19 and 20. Waiting for the Alternative Energy Committee to weigh in since they wrote them originally. And
So what are they weighing in on?
they have seen my suggested amendments and Judge Cutler's diagnostic of the two of them, and I'm just simply giving them the courtesy to weigh in on what they think of those suggestions.
I thought we had decided that was not going to be done in this iteration.
No, we are. It's what we consider low-hanging fruit to get out of the way.
Well, when was that discussion?
I don't know, a couple of months ago.
I think we had a discussion last meeting, 2 meetings, and we weren't going to go forward on that.
I don't think
We're not
that's the
doing height.
case.
Is that what you're talking about?
No, that's the next topic we'll discuss. We're talking about the wind and solar articles.
Oh, the wind and solar
Are
articles.
they
That's
gonna be
what he-
ready?
Well, yeah, there's something ready.
All
Sort of now, but by either the next meeting or our first meeting in February, can something be made ready? Yes, Judge Cutler's
Yes.
diagnostic changes are.
All right, I thought you were talking about the,
We're talking about the wind and the solar, but.
oh, okay, fine. Never,
So at the next meeting, we're going to discuss them now. Now, the next thing on our agenda is to start getting into some definitions. And I circulated something on that. Woody's comments were about all the other stuff that I had added about demolition and voluntary and involuntary in construction. They don't have to go forward. A lot of those are tied into terminology that might be used in the new Article 4 chart. So that can all wait till that. Height, I think, should go forward. We've been dealing with it for too long, and then we should go forward with it now. Judge Cutler then, and then the mixed use, the definition mixed use, I don't care one way or the other. I just changed it because I thought it was a little clearer. Judge Cutler has a number of suggestions and for definitions as well, none of which are jumping out as controversial. So again, I don't have a problem with going forward with those to get some things out of the way, but future changes to definitions are really going to be tied into what we ultimately define as uses and perhaps some new things, some things in the dimensional table. But so I'd like to get it out of the way now, if we can, the definition of height. Judge Cutler, I don't know if you have any comments on what we wrote. This was written well over a year ago.
Well, before I have any comments, I have to know exactly what you're trying to attack, what you're trying to address.
So how do I put this? We don't have a flat piece of land in town. So
Mhm.
the bottom is an undulating surface, and I don't know what we have today. I think we require 2 datum points, Lauren, or is it 4? 10 feet out.
Nothing, it's not actually spelled out in the bylaw,
All right,
but
okay.
some people have used a high and a low where it's not appropriate. We say mean or median height, but
So-
and we require within 10 feet of what's proposed
Right,
and pre-construction grade.
right.
And it's led to problems where there was a piece of ledge that's 10 feet high within 10 feet of a structure, and they use that as the high point, and then they go up from there. So
Right.
it can be abused.
Right.
Although I think the real intent, it would be to not allow people to heap up dirt onto in their yards to kind of rig the system where we say
Okay,
pre-construction
how are you-
grade.
how are you
So-
gonna know that?
I'm sorry, say that again. I couldn't hear you.
How are you going to know it's the pre-construction grade? So you have a house that's been sitting on the lot for 25 years. Over time, they've changed the grade of their lot, maybe
Well,
they built it up a little bit, and now they want to put on a new addition.
That could happen.
But
mean,
I think,
for main projects, we get pre-construction survey, for like large house review and into the building department, pre-construction grade survey, and then a proposed grade survey.
Mhm.
I think, I mean, I think we refer to pre-construction as to the new construction that is being proposed. We're not looking at an 80-year-old house being expanded on and looking at the grade 80 years ago. We're looking at the
Okay.
grade, we're looking at the grade today. And this
Okay,
came up with a
today.
project, this came up with a project 2 years ago on Jerusalem Road, and it was a tear down and a rebuild. And so the first paragraph and the first intent, but this wasn't the main driving thing, by the way, for the change, was to have more data points at the bottom in order to determine what is the average height at the bottom, with the starting point for the measurement upward. Then the second paragraph with the 3 bullets was intended to address where does the top part be measured to. And we have this rather unique thing where on a sloped roof, we measure it to the midpoint of the sloped roof.
That's pretty standard, although some go to the.
I think it's absolutely illogical and ridiculous. And it's what's been going on with property values is we're getting more and more houses and projects pushing the limit. And so we can, with the 5-foot allowance above that, we're essentially getting 40-foot houses being built.
Yes.
And so the main driver was to say on a peaked roof, it's the ridge line, not the midpoint. That was the main driver of this, but then it led to thinking, okay, where are we measuring from the bottom? And that led to the first paragraph's changes. We had a project in the village that has a mansard roof, and they were trying to say a mansard roof is a peaked roof. And everybody who was on the planning board meetings know I somewhat went apoplectic about that. And I think of a mansard roof is a flat roof that has a sloped decorative element coming down from the flat part. So make that clear, that it's a flat roof. It still has the allowance for the 5% add-on for, equipment up on the roof, but, I think we want it.
Okay,
I mean, shielding comes elsewhere, but those were the drivers of this. And it's because there was a particular project that happened 2 years ago that abused it and abused it badly.
Okay, so here's the thing. My rule is not to put requirements into the definition. I think we have to, what you want to do is measure, rather than saying this is how it's measured, we need to define what height is, where you're measuring it from. The actual height is going to be in the dimensional regulation.
Yeah, which it still is. Right now, we're not changing that 35 feet. And when we
Okay.
get to the dimensional changes, there'll be discussion of changing that at least in the harbor, probably not elsewhere.
Okay.
The 35 feet is not proven to be objectionable by itself. We did our research. We're kind of on the high end of the range. Towns are like 30 to 35 feet. Okay, we're on the high end, but we're not like an outlier. That hasn't been the problem. It's just that when you have it at 35 feet, you effectively can get a 40-foot structure. And
Okay.
that was something that a number of people want to put an end to.
Right, okay. And then measuring, so to determine the mean level, you get certain data points. Again, I think that either we can do a different definition to say mean level is determined by, we could do that. We could put it in the dimensional regulations themselves, whichever you prefer. But let me take what you've gotten and see if I can get that into 2 or 3, the height definition and some under definitions that are related to height. Okay, does that make sense? And
Right,
we've
but
talked,
you get the objective. We need more data points to measure the bottom. And
Mhm.
we need to make clear that a peak roof is, the top is the peak. not
Right.
the-
And I've used 10 feet. I think Tom suggested, 12 points across the front. I like the 10-foot matrix around the
Mhm.
foundation, but
Well, it said that we would have 10 feet from the walls, which we have in our current definition.
yeah, but then at 10-foot intervals.
No, it says 20.
Or 20 feet. 20 foot.
Yours
There's a
says,
minimum-
20, but ours doesn't. Ours says mean or median grade.
No,
Yours
but
says
then
20,
then
but
we were saying.
I
then we
think
were-
every 10 feet makes sense to me. It's not that hard to do for architects.
Well, I'm just saying, this says 12 equidistant points around the 360-degree perimeter.
That's what you proposed.
Right.
You proposed that. I'm suggesting
The
instead of
zoning bylaw working
instead of-
group adopted it. I'll tell
Instead
you
of
that.
12 equidistant points or every 20 feet, I think every 10 feet around the 10-foot area around the foundation, to me makes sense, but
Has the building
Let's see what-
inspector weighed in on
That's more points. That's
a good idea.
Clark, if
Yeah,
that's-
it's not that hard to do.
If that leads to more datum points, and that's
Yeah.
fine by me.
It's,
Okay.
it's
that's fine by
closer to
me.
median, but we should talk to the building inspector and see if maybe he
Really,
agrees
yeah.
to the 10-foot matrix.
Yeah. I think
One quick question. Does it make sense to throw out the high and the low to protect yourself against some person who has that piece of ledge?
Well, I just think that if you really get enough points, then it's a real average.
Okay.
What I think has been happening in practice is at most we're getting 4 datum points, usually 2.
Yeah, like the 4 corners and that.
And 12
but it's not-
12 will
enough.
give us, with more datum points, I'm not concerned about the ledge outcrops throwing.
Okay.
Yeah, the issue is the data points, because when you have so few data points, you can, if you did more of them, you can just cherry pick and say, we're going to take the ones that give us the best height. You see what I'm saying? So
Right.
so when they're actually doing it, they're probably not just doing 4 and stopping. They're probably doing many more data points and then choosing the ones that help create the biggest house that they can fit. So I mean, that's what's happening in actual practice.
Yeah.
So it's not that we're gonna tell the engineers and architects, oh boy, you've got to do a lot more work. They're already doing the work. They're just cherry picking the best
Good.
4 that they can get to create the volume of the house. Yeah.
now you have a story limit too, right?
I think
Not
it's
just-
2.5 stories. Yeah.
Have stories, because you can also define what stories are. So that you sort of get at it 2 ways.
So Judge, you
We have
like the
that.
idea of using the definitions as your primary regulatory standard?
I'm sorry?
Do you like the idea of using definitions as your primary kind of regulatory standard?
No, I don't think the regulation should be in the standard, should be in the standard definition. The definition itself really
That's-
just needs to define the term, what you're referring to, and then how you do that is in the regulation.
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
That's what I,
We
Yeah,
have
that-
notes below the dimensional regulations, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
See
Yeah,
note
we're-
15, see note 37,
The dimensional table
and it
is
can
gonna
live there
continue-
instead of the definitions.
Yeah, the
Well-
definitional table is still going to say whether it's 35 feet, 32 feet, 25
Right.
in the harbor, whatever it is.
How you
But this
measure,
is defining how you measure that 35 feet or 32 feet or 28 feet. That's all.
I
this
mean,
is.
you can have some of it in the definition, but I strongly urge that in the when you do the dimensional regulations, you have corresponding diagrams so that people can, point out.
That's a great suggestion.
This is the mean level, you know,
All
and
right,
this,
well, okay, we did do during the working group, we did do a diagram to go along with this
Right.
definition. We don't have diagrams in our definition, but we wanted to add one because Hingham does it. Lauren and Cassandra, Jen Oram is the one who did that. And I don't know if you still have stuff from her computer, but she had done a sketch.
I know the
Probably a
sketch
year and a half or 2 years ago.
I know the sketch you're referring to, and we'll take a look for it.
Okay.
okay, let me fool around with this a little bit and see if I
Yeah,
can.
but those objectives
Mhm.
of both bottom and top really,
Okay.
really have to be met. We discussed this at nauseum, and for whatever reason, the working group decided not to bring it forward to the fall 21 town meeting, but we had voted on doing so.
Okay.
One thing
Okay.
to consider relative to height is if you change the 35-foot measured to the midpoint of the rafter to the peak, then you're gonna have peaked roof houses that have a mass that's a lot lower than, say, you know, it sort of provides incentive for the 3-story flat roof, you know, the triple decker, just to use a term everyone can relate to, compared to the more kind of Cohasset style, probably the same mass overall, or maybe even less mass in appearance than the triple decker. But I personally like attics. You know, what you're considering, I'm not on board with, but you know, that's just me. Again, I think there are ways to break up mass that should be encouraged. And overall height, you know, I've worked with both versions, both the midpoint and the peak at 35 feet. And I found, as an architect, and I found that the peak version basically kills a lot of attic applications, which I think is disappointing from a design perspective. But there may be a magic number in there if we can really look at some examples of both the flat roof version and the peak version. There may be a magic number of 37 feet or 38 feet that really works for a lot of conditions and provides that flexibility that I think homeowners, architects can use to better their projects.
My answer to that is that I doubt we will see a bunch of flat roof residential structures. We may see what we were pitched in the village in commercial structures that way.
I'm just talking about the mass, how, you know, a 3-story
Yeah,
box
well,
with a flat roof and pitch are different animals.
I know, but also coming that the working group discussed but never made any decisions on was new regulations on the mass of houses. And you will see me bring that issue up for discussion. And I don't think height is the only way we're going to address mass or should address mass. But I appreciate, you know, yeah, I don't want a bunch of flat roof houses in town, but I don't think you'll see that either, but you never know. So, yeah.
Well, places like 3A and in the village, if you can't get that extra level by you having pitched roofs, then you know that might push
No,
it
I
the other
know.
way.
That's where it's going to happen, and that's where we, of course, are seeing it happen in the project we have right now. But
And I really think it may limit a lot of, especially those mixed use projects, to 2 stories.
well,
Forget about the 3rd story.
then I would suggest, like we've talked about changing the height limit in the harbor in order to account for base flood elevation,
Right.
and maybe again, rather than have this uniform 35 feet across town, you know, we're looking at the harbor separately. Maybe we look at the village separately, and maybe the village is
Well, Well, and
A
also
different, a
the
different kind of
single-family-
measure about what
Single
we
family
do.
houses. What I would recommend for this one would be to look at a bunch of examples that we know what the heights are. And see what the pros and cons are of different dimensional numbers. And maybe it's 35 feet for a flat roof and maybe it's 38 feet max for a pitched roof. I don't know, but I think having
Well,
examples
that's
would be
fine.
good.
That's fine. I don't disagree with doing that when we get to the dimensional table, but I think the definition can apply to all of those,
Sure. Yep.
no matter what height we set in different districts for different
Yes.
types of structures. So, and I will tell you, the working group had never considered deviating from 35 feet other than the harbor. It just never came up as a hot topic for discussion, but I think maybe the idea of differentiating it depending on the district and the type of structure is probably not a bad idea.
Might be worth considering.
When,
Yeah.
when you look at the residential side, it's really going to be dependent on the layout of the land.
Right.
You know, so it might be more advantageous to go with the flat roof because the layout of the land, and you can't get it, you know, to that, you can't get a pitch roof on that 35, or in other cases it could be done easily. But it's going to depend on that layout of the land and what part of town they're in is probably going to be the
Yeah,
Yeah.
you look at
determinant.
examples on the hillside. There's some that are just monsters looking down over
Yep.
their next door neighbors and completely, you know, allowed in that 35 midpoint thing. But maybe there's a performance component to that where if you're close to a property line or a steep slope, that would help to mitigate the mass and create opportunities that fit their context a little bit better and respect their neighbors.
All right, well, those are all going to be hot topics for the dimensional table because, again,
Hot.
the approach of my draft and the approach that this working group was at least starting to discuss was to take a real hard stab at limiting mass of buildings more so than we do today. You know, today we don't essentially, and we have what I consider now a wishy-washy large home review. But, you know, we'll discuss this in the future, but I mean, I'm going to propose to you hard FAR or either FAR or gross floor area limits that are different than what we have today. And
Okay, well, we haven't even talked about this yet, so
Yeah.
no, I know,
it's
right?
beyond
Well,
our beyond
no,
the
I know.
conversation.
It's
But
beyond our thing. All right, so
I
let's,
think anything that respects that creates solutions that where neighbors respect their neighbors and things seem to fit their context is any of those are good.
okay,
But
I don't
it is
disagree, but that's
important
not what's been happening in
to
town.
have
in the last 20
options.
years.
It is
No, I get it.
important to have options for.
All right, well,
Well,
we can think about that.
I do think that Tom's on the right track because in the planning, and you've seen it as well, Clark. But I can tell you around town, people want to end this I don't want to use the word overdevelopment. They want to keep Cohasset in the same scale that it is. So that would be our guiding thing. I have another meeting that started at 8 o'clock that I do have to at least do a little bit in there. But now that I see that
I think we're almost done.
we are. David is our quorum saver.
Yeah, no, that's fine, Jack. Though I do want to go quickly down Judge Cutler's list of definitional changes before we.
I
break
think those are the ones that you sent earlier.
down.
From
Yeah,
the
I
6th
think-
of January.
Yeah, I think I.
Yeah,
circulated
no, they're
her.
fine. They're excellent. I'm
All right.
fine.
Yeah, all right, thank you.
All right, thank you
you're
all.
out. All right,
Talk to you later. Bye.
all right. So, again, I think Judge Cutler for guidance, the definition, I think we have a consensus somewhat on the objectives for that. What we do with the number is going to be dealt with later when we get to the dimensional table, and we might have some broader, more creative ideas for that when we get to it. All right, so now on your list, you suggested a number of edits and changes, which I don't know if we need to consider one by one. I hope everybody's seen this. It says JCC notes 1623 at the top. I think these are
They
a
make
couple-
sense to me.
Yeah, so
Lauren, do you have any comments?
I didn't take any issue with any of the suggestions.
Right.
Thank you.
So the sign definitions, I'm going to take a crack at offering some possibilities for you as part of the sign
Okay.
regulations, just so you can bat those around. The question that I had on the premises, does anybody know the answer to that?
which is that?
So Article 2 says
Oh, yeah,
define
take
premises
that out.
except-
I
we
don't
can
know.
take
what- Yeah, I would take that out. That sounded crazy. I don't know how that happened, but this is what happens when you graft a bunch of things onto things over the years
Okay.
without looking at the whole thing.
A lot in any building and structures and uses thereon.
No, it's about the provision about providing in Article 11, which makes no sense.
It defines it and as it says, except is provided in Article 11, but Article 11 doesn't provide for anything else. So I just,
Yeah.
I think
And
we can
then,
take.
by the way, Judge Cutler asked if we were going forward any changes of Article 11, not this time around. So,
Okay,
Or-
then I will work on the height thing and I will come up with some sign definitions for
Right.
next time.
And then I've asked everybody from the planning board and everybody I could ask in this committee, were there any other definitions that jump out at you that need to go or be added or be modified that are of an immediate need? And maybe that's more for Lauren and Cassandra to answer. I don't know what the zoning board has been tangling with definitions. The planning board's given no feedback on it, so I don't know if anybody else had anything else. So,
Well, I don't have anything, I haven't gotten into it, but I would like to take the half a dozen other zoning bylaws that I use on a regular basis and just see if there's anything that jumps out.
okay.
I was going to say to that one, when I was looking at some of the other bylaws in the other towns, there's other definitions that they have that we don't have, but
Right.
necessarily if they're not tied to something in our bylaw, in other words, on the use table or something like that, do we need the definition just for a definition's sake? In other words, so that it's because there's all these allowable uses you can have,
No.
which go endless. But then if it's not being covered in the bylaw, do we need a definition for something just to define it so that it's actually, defined, or is this the regular usage of something, the general one, will that work?
All right, well, Woody's comment to me about the other things that I had suggested in my little memo, he said, why do we need all this stuff? Because we don't have
Yes.
we don't have arguments about, and he said we should, he goes, the zoning board, we use plain and ordinary meeting, and in the
Yep.
preface to the new preface to the article and definitions that I had written, I wanted to rely on that too. In the law, we use
Yeah.
plain and ordinary meaning. We use, what is the other phrase, commonly understood, like, for
Webster's.
example, the definitions in the wind bylaw about, describing parts of a wind turbine. I don't think we need those damn definitions. I think those are commonly understood industry terms of
Yeah.
what they are. And I would get rid of them, for the most, and
You need to have some kind of a reference for people. So if there are industry terms, then there has to be some way, well, which document are we referring to? Because there may be 15 different, samples of industry terms, and well, which one are you looking at?
There could be the evil architect's manual of expansive definitions, right?
How to exploit your local zoning bylaw.
Yes.
I agree that if we try to split too many hairs on
Yeah.
defining a word for the sake of it, and it gets outside of a plain and ordinary meeting, we just create problems for us that we don't need.
I mean,
So
some things,
I think
Yeah.
definitions should be minimized as much, but when we get into the use table, and we start
you're gonna have to
defining
describe.
specific uses, then we're gonna need them, and we will be doing that then, but, all right. So I guess this is the universe of definitions, unless Clark you know, by the next meeting or certainly no later than the first February
Soon,
meeting.
you mean soon.
Yeah, if you have any other suggestions, by all means.
Yeah, I'm gonna take a look too, and if there's any that I think might be relevant, then I'll bring them up. You know, from looking at Hingham, Situate, some of the other ones around us. You know, if they don't seem to be germane, then I won't even bring them up. But
That's fair.
That's
I'm
cool.
planning to do the same.
All right, good. All right. All right, then. That, I think, concludes our discussion on articles for tonight. And Lauren and Judge Cutler will continue to work on what the number is for the notice of intent. It's probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 10. And then Judge Cutler, you're free to go unless you have any other things to bring up. And then we just
Hey,
have to
Tom,
vote.
can we just talk about the separate meeting idea? Jack was a little lukewarm on it. But I think we run into trouble. We may not get a quorum if we have a separate meeting on just zoning in particular, because we don't have a lot of content here. And you know, we want to get our 100 people for the meeting and not have to
Well,
put it all off as an
Yeah,
expensive disaster.
well, again, we don't know what the annual town meeting warrant is going to look like. The last
Right.
couple of years, it's been rather small compared to former
I
annual
know,
town
but
meeting. warrant.
if you do your homework and you coach this as housekeeping, with very little that's gonna change the zoning bylaws, I think you can move fairly swiftly through that. As
Okay, I
opposed
mean-
to, you know, I know I was a major antagonist on this private way war that got set up, but I think that because of Zoom meetings and the approach, we just didn't get to vet
Yeah,
the issue thoroughly. But I don't think that's the case with what we're proposing.
no, I agree with you. I mean, if we were still doing annual town meeting on a Saturday, I wouldn't worry about this, but I'm worried that a Monday night, if the rest of the warrant is long, and if the rest of the warrant, you know, the budget presentation is going to go on, although amazingly, we vote for $50 million in 5 seconds. We never have debate in the vote, but you know, we
Always.
debate, you know, as well as I do, there's some other stupid, obscure article that's going to generate debate. I'd like to believe that 100 people are going to come out and take interest in zoning,
Right,
but
but-
yes, it means
But we
coming on a
want to
Tuesday.
do that debate up front. We want to
Well,
get
that's what the purpose of
listen
the
to
forum.
everything that anyone
yes,
has to say about it so that there's nothing left.
That's what the purpose of the, I
and-
guess,
and
I guess
with-
here's how we'll do it. Here's how
Wait
we'll
a
do
minute,
it.
let me make one point.
Yeah.
The drive-in town meeting that we had, whatever that was, a year and a half ago
Yeah.
at the music circus,
Yep.
where there wasn't a single question. We were changing things on the zoning table. We were allowing a use variance. We were doing some kind of interesting things that I thought, and not a single question, not a single issue, because Lauren did such a great job putting it together, and she talks fast and she knows what she's doing. So I think that, I mean,
Walked away to get water and got the half end
you
of that. So
got up. So, I mean, I think that approach is, I think it could really work for these housekeeping
I hear you.
thing, and do it as a part of town meeting. If
All right.
we had a
well,
lot of content where we thought it was going to be controversial, I would say, you know, maybe, but even how are we going to get 100 people interested in talking about making zoning changes? I don't
well,
know.
I don't know that'd be, but I hear what you're saying.
It's
and what I was-
preferred
this-
to do it as a part of regular town meeting.
All right, so we are intending to roll these articles out early.
And yeah.
And, you know, so the 30th is
Yep.
just gonna be article 8 to the extent that the single lot exemption is probably the potentially most controversial thing on this whole package. On the February forum is to roll out the rest of it. And if we sit there that night and say, okay, everybody understands this, we got a good turnout and good feedback, or we got a lousy turnout, which is gonna then tell us we probably wouldn't get a quorum for a Tuesday night. You know, then that I think, you know, we have flexibility to make this decision further on, you know, down the road. I just think it, my thought in suggesting a separate thing is simply being fair to the town that we're making the first, monumental changes in the bylaw comprehensively in 36 years, and it deserves the attention. But, I'll defer
Yeah,
to
and
everybody.
I don't think for this one, maybe for the content one
Oh,
with
the
the
next one,
the
yeah, the
area
next,
table regulations being changed, yeah, possibly, but it's
uh,
still not a preferred model.
no, I hear you. I hear you. I'm not, if we had done this all in one town meeting, I would have suggested we just have a separate special town meeting for it. And just have its
The
own vote.
logistics of a separate town meeting
I know
are
that,
not,
but
it's not a simple thing.
I understand that. I've been through a number of them to know that, but it also is when particularly when the fall comes, to try to squeeze all of this into a Monday night, I don't think is a conducive forum either. Now,
Do you-
I don't know if by then we have this crazy nonsense.
What's that, Your Honor?
Do you have less of a quorum for a special?
No,
No, it's all 100.
no, and I don't know. We passed some ridiculous thing to allow people to participate remotely, and I don't know if that's going to be in effect then. But it was funny, that vote was all the young people voted for it, and all the old timers said no. That it's going to be abused, and it was just a very interesting dynamic at that vote, how it split. But maybe if that's in effect by the fall town meeting, maybe the dynamics change a little bit. But I'm just suggesting it. I'm glad we're having this discussion. We don't have to make the decision tonight. But you're right. These articles could probably go forward. But again, it depends on the length of the regular warrant.
I think you also have to look at the expectation of people that when you have Springtown meeting, that's where the real meat of everything is brought. So there is an expectation that if you're going to bring zoning articles, even if they're housekeeping in nature, that's the place to do it at. That is the precise time and the precise place to do it. We don't know what other articles will be proposed by people, and that's fine. They can do whatever they're doing. But when you're talking about budget and your zoning stuff, I mean, the spring one is perfectly fine to put it all there and say here it is, for all of our housekeeping stuff, and then go on with our chart as we're doing the other ones. But I would try and get whatever we want to do in the spring, front load it and get it done.
Yeah, and we have other options. We could talk to Danny. I mean, there was a year we did random selection after the budget, that we did that for a couple of years. We could ask Danny to take the zoning articles out of order right after the budget and get it done early.
Yeah.
But my fear is that, we do part of it on Monday night and then get pushed into Tuesday to finish it. And that's when we'll have a real quorum problem if it gets all split up.
Well, that's
Well,
where you
again,
could.
if we let
yeah.
Lauren do the talking and the quick presentation and effective that she did at drive-through town meeting, I don't think it's going to be an issue.
I get it. Drive-through town meeting had its other.
No, when Clark brings up a good point, is that the video that was done on some of those articles when they had the drive-through one, that is very effective. The quick,
It was a real
2 to
presentation.
4 minute, or on
It
each
wasn't
one
Tom
of
just going up there and talking for an hour.
I'm
on
not
each
going to,
article.
Clark, I'm not an idiot. I know how.
Sorry, I
these
didn't.
get
I'm sorry, Tom. I'm sorry. It just slipped out.
But the key to it was going over and the anticipation of some of the questions that there were going to be. It covered it in that little 2 to 4 minute presentation
Right.
that was
Yeah,
done
and
by
it was-
video.
And it was
And
great.
that's-
I mean,
Which is
I've
what we're
sold a
gonna
lot
learn.
of zoning bylaws on the floor of town meeting over the last decade and a half. And I have a lot of respect for the intelligence of the people attending. And I thought that what Lauren did was a great model. And as long as that's what we're thinking, then if Lauren's willing.
Yes, no, I'm
As
happy
planning
to help as
director.
much as I can. Yeah.
I'm not gonna get into that, who's presenting it, but,
Well, we're talking
I-
about it
I
now,
under-
Tom. I mean, if
Paul,
you've
Clark,
decided that you have to do it, then maybe we should talk about that.
Right, I'm gonna bow out of this one.
whatever, whatever.
Thank you, Judge Cutler.
Okay,
Thank you,
very
Judge. All right,
much.
we'll see you in 2 weeks. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
All right. Can I have a motion to approve the meetings of December 19th?
So moved.
Second,
In favor?
Clark Brewer, aye.
Tom Callahan, aye.
David Farag, aye.
All right. We can talk more about this, but I.
Well, think about
I
it
am-
carefully, Tom.
First of all, let's do these two forms and roll them out. That is going to give us questions to anticipate. The planning board is going to give us questions to anticipate because, you know, as much as Clark and I brief them, it's just going to generate questions.
Yeah, they're gonna think their own thing.
And you're going to maybe have different people show up and participate in those public hearings than show up at a forum. You know, then we're going to get selectmen questions and zoning board questions and advisory questions. So by the time town meeting comes around, we're gonna know what a lot of the questions are. I respect usually the intelligence of town meeting, but I also see a lot of people who come in very ill-informed and there for some other special interest article.
That's true, yeah, but you still have to sell it. I mean, you have.
I
to-
get it. I get it. And
It's its own thing.
I know that. I've been through, what, 2 or 3 citizen petition processes over the last 20 years. So I know what we have to do. And we'll do it. I just would dread if the articles did not all get reached in one night on the Monday night. If we can arrange for that to happen where they're addressed early and together, so, and let the other town meeting stuff go whenever it goes, fine. I have no problem with that. If this was a Saturday town meeting, I don't think it would be a problem, but we've departed from Saturdays, so that's fine. And this will be, I think, a relatively easy sell, other than perhaps the single lot exemption, but that's why we're splitting it up into 2 votes. So, the fall is going to be a completely different animal, and I think we really have to think hard about that one.
I wouldn't worry about it yet. I mean, if.
No,
we're
I know, but
effective
you know,
if we're effective at this swing at the ball, then then that will make that much easier.
and is it anticipated that the fall town meeting would be the same like December?
I don't know the answer to that yet, but probably.
And for setting up in December, everything had to be ready by when? October?
Sounds about right.
Okay, so, you know.
Count on having it
Yeah,
kind of
no,
figured
it's
out
just,
end of summer.
no, we're working through the
Moves
downtime.
quickly.
Yeah, I know, and we're gonna be working on the substance through the downtime of the summer. But, you know, my hope is that we have these articles in such a shape that we can start discussing the next round, you know, as early as April, you know. April, certainly May. Town meeting's gonna be May 1st, so we're gonna know what happened on May 1st, so. All right, so next time, again, we're gonna be dealing with 3. The tweaks to, no, we did 3 tonight. We're gonna vote on Article 3. We're gonna deal with whatever the judge presents us on Article 6.
19, yeah.
And then we're gonna deal with Articles 19 and 20.
When's our next meeting?
The Monday, the 23rd is the meeting. Monday, the 30th is the forum. That simply will be about Article 8. And Laura, and again, you've mentioned this to me, but yes, Justin needs to start promoting the hell out of that one.
What was the date of the forum again? You had it?
January 30th, and then what's the second
Oh, yeah.
one? February
27th, I think, which is the last
27th.
Monday in February.
Okay.
We spoke with Justin today. I just am looking to confirm that we're not conflicting with another forum series that AEC is doing. So we have the 30th as a tentative, but I'll confirm with you tomorrow.
And the rec center is the 26th of March, I believe, 1 to 4, something like that.
Do you recall what dates those were, Cassandra? Off the top of your head?
We got
Not
the
off the top
flyer
of my
in the
head,
mail.
but I can pull it up really quick.
I think it's March 26th, 1 to 4, rec center. We want to have a booth.
All
It
right.
is Sunday, March 26th, starting at 1. He didn't give me an end time.
I think it's 1 to 4, at least.
Yeah, and
that's-
I'm hoping, you know, and the same thing with town meeting, I'm hoping the planning board, when we do our section 5 hearings, we can do that in one night, but we'll see. you know, we're not being inundated on the planning board with permit applications, so hopefully we'll find, you know, one of our March dates, the early March date is clean and we can do them all in one night. And then, you know, I'll leave it to Lauren and Cassandra to schedule us with the select board, the advisory committee and the zoning board, those three. I think we owe it to all three, you know, we owe it to the zoning board to go to them as a whole board and get their recommendation. You know, and I don't know, the printing deadline is what, usually, what, a month before?
I have the whole schedule. I'd have to double check.
Yeah, I mean, you know, whatever, we'll do with as much printing changes as we can. If we can't, you know, then I'd like to
Yeah,
minimize, I'd like to minimize the need for amendments at the floor, but.
Yeah, we
So-
most assuredly need the blessing of the
Yep.
zoning board before going to
Yeah.
town meeting with the zoning laws that they're going to be enforcing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and again, that's why I wanted to bring Woody into the process of certain
Yeah, and
definitions.
don't forget the building inspector too,
Yeah.
Okay.
and our planning director.
I'm here.
They're free to speak. Do you have, I'm gonna ask them right now, do you have anything to say, Ed? Did we miss something? Are we missing something? Do you
Think about that. yeah.
think we're going, and Milo the cat, your Milo, my Milo's sitting over here.
He's a
and-
zoning expert.
Yeah,
He might have something to say.
He's really concerned actually about short-term rentals, but to David's point, we don't actually regulate those right now. So why put them in the definitions if you don't regulate them?
The Airbnb next door.
my proposed definitions would have, and when we get to the uses, that's another topic. And I don't know what people in the town feel about that. You know, I haven't heard a giant outrageous sentiment about Airbnbs or not. I don't know how many people use them, but
There's
Right.
not a lot of them, I don't think, but all you have to do is go on and see.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, when we get to the table of uses,
It is a
Yeah.
housing option.
the
Well,
thing
it's-
about the table of uses is it's an incredibly long laundry list of crap. And as Woody has always pointed out, the laundry list still caused Crazy Paws to have to go to court to get permission. We have one kind of dog.
They didn't go to court. We changed the bylaw. They did
Whatever
not,
they
they
had,
did not go to court.
whatever they had to go through.
We
to get
changed the
their
zoning
permission,
bylaw,
It was craziness and, so.
but we have the use variance now, so
We'll
no big
talk
deal.
about that approach when we get to that. but- All right.
Okay.
So, yeah, and so it's just so you're looking ahead to the fall, it's gonna be Article 4, Article 5, Article 7. About if we need to update anything in our parking regs, and it's gonna be Article 11, and then the overlay districts, and I don't know that there's anything crazy we need to do about the overlay districts. And then at the end of the day, we can talk about the whole reorganization, but, you know, for Article 4.
one thing at a time, Tom.
No, I
It's
know,
good
but
to keep the
I'm-
big picture in
I
mind and
know
then
that, I
focus on the
gotta
details.
think about the big picture too, so I'm working on this too long, that's why, so, all right,
You're good,
That's
you're
it.
good.
that's it.
It's,
Motion to
but drive
adjourn.
safely, Tom, you know, we just want you got a lot of stuff in your head, so, and you're driving the bus. Just
My
drive
God.
safely.
Okay, lots of analogies and stuff here. All right, who wants to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Good night.
all right, too.
Thanks.
Thank
Good
you,
night,
Lauren,
everybody.
Sandra,
Good night,
appreciate you
all.
being here. All right, bye.